Well, I haven't made a few enemies in a hot minute just by standing my ground and refusing to change who I am, so let's change that, shall we? What's up guys, Acerthorn here, and today I'd like to address some controversy that came from my last video where I rebutted against Jim Sterling's recent video about Batgirl's cancellation, specifically the allegedly transphobic comments, and I emphasize the word allegedly here, because I don't think I was all that transphobic. Now, before I start, I should point out that my keyboard right now is broken, so this is going to take a long time to edit. Obviously, I don't need a keyboard just to sit here and talk into this microphone, but when I actually go to edit the video, I'm going to have to use the on-screen keyboard to do that with, which is going to be really slow and really monotonous. So it's going to take a while for me to get this video out. So if you're thinking that this is just old news and that I should have just struck when the iron was hot, that's the reason why. It is Tuesday, August 9th right now, 2022, which is when I'm recording this. So it's only been one day since I actually posted that video about Jim Sterling, so this is getting recorded recently. It's just taking a while to edit is all. So that's the reason why why I'm so late to the party here. Anyway, in the last video, I used he/him pronouns to refer to Jim Sterling, and I even emphasized that I wasn't going to use they/them pronouns because they and them are plural pronouns. I'm not going to use that to refer to a singular person. So, needless to say, that sparked quite a bit of controversy. I got more people talking about that in the comments of that video than they did the comment on the actual stuff that I wanted to talk about. The cancellation of Batgirl and the fact that the $90 million actually went into the pockets of many working class people. Those were the things I really wanted to say in that video. But I got more people commenting about my transphobia and my bigotry towards trans people than they did that. One person in particular who actually engaged with me, he didn't just post it, he didn't just cuss me out for being transphobic, so I'm actually gonna respond substantially to his comments, was a guy named Luna Tantric. Or maybe it was a girl named Luna Tantric. I don't know. It's really none of my business. Anyway, he basically just said it was disrespectful of me not to use the pronouns that Sterling himself had chosen for him. Look, I just want to preface this by saying this much. I am not transphobic. There's a handful of specific things that trans people are pushing for that I disapprove of. But I am not transphobic. In fact, I've actually dated male to female transgender people in the past. Multiple times! Yes, multiple trans girls I have actually dated. Heck, one of them would send naked pictures and sexy dances to me over the internet for me to fap to, and she was actually pre-op. Like she looked like a woman, and she even had breasts on her chest, but she still had her dick and balls. So when she sent me those things, sometimes I would be like, "Damn, girl, you're more hung than I am." No, and yes, I am absolutely not transphobic. What I do have a problem, I don't have a problem, and even if you're not completely passable, even if you don't look like a woman, well, first of all, I'm not gonna date you if you don't look like a woman. But at the same time, I'm still gonna treat you with respect, all the respect that you deserve. And no, being transgender does not mean you deserve less respect. Being a bitch means you deserve less respect, but being trans does not. My problem here is with trans people insisting that people actually adjust their understanding of the English language and accept that there are more than two genders. And I'm sorry, but that is just not something that I can accept. You can't just change the language, and especially you can't just change science whenever you fucking want. I mean, science is pretty... this is not even us just having a disagreement about art. This is us having a disagreement about scientific principles that have been universally understood for millennia. And you're not trying to challenge science because it's actually observably different than what the current theory is. This isn't a case of the church. Many years ago, the church had a rigid model of the universe that had the Earth in the center. And scientists quickly realized that what they could see through their telescopes didn't match up with the church's model. Nowadays, we look back at that and we think, oh, that self-entitled, self-righteous church. Oh, their feelings, they just refuse to accept reality because it didn't conform to their agenda. Of course, we look back at those years with disdain because, you know, as the old saying goes, facts don't care about your feelings. But you also don't get to, but at the same time, now here we are with trans people trying to insist that there are more than two genders and how they and them can refer to a singular person. They're just trying to change language and science to conform to their agendas, and they aren't even offering any objective observations or scientific calculations to back up their claims. It's literally just a spare my feelings kind of thing. I mean, okay, I get that if you're a transgendered person, that your dick and balls may cause you great dysphoria. I sympathize with that. My dick and balls don't cause me any dysphoria. But that's not to say that. But I do accept that people are like that. There are people out there who are like that. The problem here isn't that trans people exist. There's a lot of people out there who would say that the problem is that trans people exist and that they have no right to be transgender. I'm not one of them. The problem is that you're trying to force other people to change their behavior to just tiptoe around and walk around eggshells for your feelings. And I'm sorry, but that is just not something that I can accept. And to show you what I mean, let's look at a fairly recent civil rights movement that actually had a lot in common with the trans movement, the gay rights movement. In the 20-noughts, in the first half of the 20-teens, it was often said that gay is the new black, because the civil rights movement for gay people had a lot in common with the civil rights movement for black people. However, one of the biggest differences, for those of you who are too young to remember even that far back, even though it was only about a decade ago, for those of you who are too young to remember even that far back, one of the biggest strengths that the gay rights movement had going for it, and one of the biggest reasons why I became what was known as a straight ally, meaning that I'm not gay myself, but I am sympathetic to the gay people's plights. One of the biggest things is that they had going for them was that straight people were not adversely affected in any way, shape, or form by gay people having relationships. In fact, that was even affirmed by the Supreme Court. Yeah, Opterfeld v. Hodges is the 2016 or 2015, mid-2010s Supreme Court decision that said that gay marriage was a constitutional right. It is not the first time that the Supreme Court in the 21st century actually took up the issue of gay marriage. The first one was Perry v. Brown. It actually started in the district court not Perry v. Brown, it was Hollingsworth v. Perry, sorry. It can often get confusing like that for reasons I'm about to discuss. Anyway, it started in the district court as Perry v. Schwarzenegger, because Arnold Schwarzenegger was at the time, governor of California. When it went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, it was rebranded as Perry v. Brown, because Schwarzenegger's successor was named Brown, and he was the governor of California at the time then. So then when it went to the Supreme Court, the respondents, the defendants in the district court were now the ones bringing the appeal to the Supreme Court, so the names got switched around. So now it was called Brown versus Perry. The problem is that the Supreme Court decided that they couldn't even address the issue of same-sex marriage in that case because of a lack of intervener standing. Bear in mind that both Schwarzenegger and Brown had chosen not to even defend the case because they agreed with the plaintiffs. They couldn't just ignore the state constitution. It was ratified by the people of the state of California, but at the same time, they weren't going to defend what they considered to be an immoral constitutional amendment. So, if all had gone according to plan, those plaintiffs would have just gotten a default judgment. Except that some homophobic bigots had actually swooped in and moved to intervene, and they tried to become intervener defendants. And so it got all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, you can't intervene in this case because you don't have standing. And you don't have standing because you can't show how you've actually been adversely affected by the plaintiffs actually getting a marriage license. Yeah, they actually questioned the interveners in that case, both in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals level and the Supreme Court level, about whether or not they had suffered any sort of injury at all, and the interveners were unable to offer anything. And so while it wasn't the final chapter in the gay marriage debate, it did serve as a powerful victory. The homophobic crowd suffered a great defeat that day, even though the war, they had lost the battle, but not the war. But frankly, the war was quintessentially over at that point. All because this is what a lot of the gay rights activists had been saying for years at that point. Why do you even care? Who the hell cares if what your neighbors are doing behind closed doors where you don't even have to fucking look at them or listen to them? I mean, are you just the only way it adversely affects you if two men are bumping uglies in private is if you were just driven mad by your hatred of them, of people who have a different lifestyle than you. And I'm sorry, but that is just not enough to get standing to actually interfere in their rights. The law does not recognize butthurt as being a legally cognizable injury. So until you can show some other way in which your rights are being intruded upon, the Supreme Court held, in a legally binding precedent, that homophobic people just need to fuck off, mind their own business, and let gay people do whatever they want that doesn't adversely affect anyone else. So that was the decision from the Supreme Court before Obderville v. Hayes. But now, here we are in the trans rights movement, and suddenly all of these excuses that gay rights activists had a decade ago suddenly go flying out the window. Nowadays, it's not enough they are taking hormones and getting sex reassignment surgery so that their outer appearance more accurately reflects how they feel inside. If that were all they were doing, then it would be quintessentially no different than just getting a tattoo. For me, but the problem here is that that's not all that they're doing. It isn't enough that you're getting a vaginoplasty and getting a breast implants so that you can become a woman. The problem is you expect other people to accept that there are more than two genders, which there's not. There are male and female. And once in a blue moon you have a hermaphrodite, somebody who has bits of both sexes' reproductive organs but doesn't have a full set of either. Would you believe me if I said I dated one of those in the past? Only one. They are rare. But anyway, I'm sorry, but it's one, and believe it or not, I don't even care if you identify as non-binary. Deep down inside, in a purely internal sense, you just feel like you don't fit into either male or female gender roles. That's fine with me too. What I have a problem with is when you start expecting me to change my behavior and my understanding of the English language and my worldview as to what exactly is to change my understanding of the English language and my understanding as to what that there's a difference between gender and sex. No, there isn't. There hasn't been a difference between gender and sex for the entirety of the English language. They have always been synonyms. And I'm sorry, but I just don't see your fee-fees as a compelling reason to change that. That's not to say I'm going to go out of my way to antagonize you over you being non-binary or trans. I'm not. As long as you don't go around antagonizing me, simply because I refuse to change my way of life and my language and my understanding of science, just because you're kinda offended by it. Once you start opening the floodgates for fundamental worldviews to be altered just to accommodate somebody else's feelings, what else do we get? What else can we change about science just to make people feel better? If I were to say that acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, but some people are offended by that, do I take on an obligation to change the rate of gravity to whatever the hell fits their agenda? I'm reminded of an excerpt from George Orwell's 1984. Prior to the revolution, and by the way, I'm citing this from memory, so the text that appears on screen, which is going to be copied and pasted from the book, might not gel exactly with what I'm saying into the microphone. Anyway, the party prior to the revolution could say that 2 and 2 make 5, but whenever they were crafting helicopters and other war vessels, they had to make 4. I mean, obviously the party in that case, in that book, the party of Ingsoc, was clearly portrayed as being in the wrong. You can't just adjust your worldview. You can't force other people to accept your worldview just because it's convenient to you in that moment. And of course, 1984 was an extreme example. But here, trans people and non-binaries are pretty much doing an admittedly watered-down version of that, but a version of that nonetheless. They expect you to not just to treat them with respect because they're doing what makes them happy, and more power to them for that, but they expect you to change how you behave just to make them feel better. And no, fuck no, go to hell on that. So no, you can go ahead and be trans. You can even go ahead and be non-binary. I won't stop you. I'll even use she/her pronouns to refer to a transgendered woman, since that's still singular pronouns. If I were ever hiring, I would not discriminate against you for being trans. If I owned property that I was leasing out to somebody, I would not discriminate against a trans tenant. Hell, if you look exactly like a woman, I might even date you. But then, all I ask is that if you expect me to respect your wishes, you don't get the right to then turn around and force me to change my behavior in a way that makes me uncomfortable, just because me not doing that somehow makes you uncomfortable. Because we both have rights here. And for the record, when it comes to dating a trans person, I do feel that you should be transparent about your history as a transgendered person whenever you're hooking up with somebody, because that person has every right to be super straight if they want to be. For you to act like if somebody is super straight, that they are inherently transphobic just because they're super straight, that's the equivalent of saying that if somebody refuses to date a gay person, that makes them homophobic. No, that's not how it works. That wasn't how it worked a decade ago, which is the main reason why gay people won that civil rights war. And it's not how it works in 2022. So no, I don't consider myself transphobic. I'm not even really being all that disrespectful when I use singular pronouns to refer to a singular person. Now, some people have also said was used to refer to a singular person before singular you existed. And to show this, they refer to a Middle English novel from the year 1375 as an example of a werewolf who went by they/them pronouns. And this is back when people were still using thou and thee as second-person pronouns. So yeah, here's the problem with that. When you're talking about the werewolf, that really is effectively multiple people, because you have the human who exists by day and he's affable and likable and sociable, and then you have the monster who comes out at the full moon. That's actually two different people, just because they share a body and can't be both coexist at the same time. That doesn't matter. Those are just as much two different people as Jekyll and Hyde were two different people. It's like at the very end of the 2002 movie Spider-Man. The Goblin killed those people. I, Dr. Osborn, had nothing to do with it. Though it's clear that Osborn sees the goblin as a completely different person than him. And that's how the werewolf also mattered. There were two people in that relationship, the man and the monster, the Jekyll and the Hyde. So no, I don't see that as being an example of they-them pronouns referring to a single being. So anyway, there's still gonna be people out there who think I'm transphobic because for a group of people who claim to want acceptance, they don't seem to be willing to be accepting of any worldview aside from their own. So yeah, people are going to say I'm transphobic, people are going to unsubscribe just like they do every time I make a controversial statement. When I made my video defending digital homicide, I got shitloads of backlash then. Oh god, people are going to just be unsubscribing left, right, and center. People are going to be calling me transphobic left, right, and center. If you can't have a civilized, respectful discussion with me, then maybe you're better off unsubscribing. Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. So anyway, that was my view on the extreme trans entitlement. So with that out of the way, I am Acer Thorn, and I will see you guys next time.